Sartre wrote this in the grey mists of Paris. Jax Teller breathes it in the suffocating heat of charming California, where the sun beats mercilessly on cracked asphalt and buried dreams. Every morning, the infinite weight of being able to choose. Every morning, the seductive temptation to pretend you can't. Bad faith begins in front of the mirror. Jax looks at himself. Black leather vest like a second skin, patches sewn with a convert's faith. The reaper carved into his back like an inverted cross. "It's who I am," he whispers to himself. Comforting lie. Sartre would call it bad faith, pretending that essence precedes existence, that blood is destiny, that the dead decide for the living. There's always a choice, even when it seems there isn't. Jax Teller in the first season is a man who wakes up inside a cell without bars. The club is his home, his blood, his inheritance. But it's also the cage. He begins the story accepting destiny. Vice President, son of John, son of Gemma, and shadow of clay. An heir who doesn't need to think, just follow. But Hamlet's ghost doesn't appear in Charming. What calls to him is a diary. The pages left by John Teller, not a myth, but a confession. The club became prison, freedom rotted into crime. Jax divides himself. Between inherited loyalty, the brotherhood of leather, iron, and blood, and desired loyalty, Tara, Abel, his father's call for a clean road. He reads the notebook like someone facing a tightrope. Each word is a promise of escape. Each page, a reminder that there's no way out without betrayal. The son is born turning himself inside out, the body rejecting its own architecture, as if being born into criminality were too much to bear. Sartre would see poetry in this. We're all Abel, viscera exposed to the world, pretending that skin defines us when we're just flesh organizing itself desperately against chaos. Jax holds his baby with trembling hands, feels the tiny heart beating and Abel's labored breathing. The son's birth, so fragile and premature, sounds like consequence of a world he didn't choose to inhabit, of a legacy he didn't choose to inherit. Not that way. It also resonates beyond the absurdity of an addicted mother. Still, Jax doesn't see predestination. He sees infinite possibility trembling like Abel's strength clinging to life. Fatherhood should awaken protective instincts. It awakens existential anguish. Jax realizes he can choose any future for Abel. Doctor, lawyer, free man. He can break the cycle. He can be the father John tried to be. But freedom frightens more than prison. It's easier to accept that blood runs deep, that the boy was born for this. The responsibility of choosing his son's future reveals the responsibility of having chosen his own present. That's when he finds the manuscripts. John Teller wrote in good faith, rare thing in Charming. He admitted what everyone denies. The club is a human project, not divine commandment. It was created by hands that trembled. It can be destroyed by hands that choose to tremble differently. The only freedom man truly wants is the freedom to be comfortable. It's not a lament. It's the confession of an architect watching the cathedral he built collapse. The last pages are paranoia or prophecy. JT writes about clay, about how his partner and best friend became a threat, about Gemma pulling away, about feeling death approaching. John Teller dies in 1993. Clay Morrow assumes the presidency, marries Gemma, making official what already existed in the shadows, becomes Jax's father. The club never again spoke of the ideas for change that JT proposed. Clay Morrow is institutionalized bad faith. He talks about tradition like others talk about God. solemn voice, glassy eyes of feigned faith. Tradition? Honor? The way things are. As if SAMCRO sprouted from California soil like cracks impossible to avoid. As if they were blind instruments of destiny, not conscious authors of every line written with blood and gunpowder. It's what we do, he repeats like a mantra. It's not what they do. It's what they choose to do. Every meeting at the Oval Table is an assembly of freedoms pretending to be slaves. Kill or not kill, war or peace, drugs or guns, hands rise, decisions cut through the air, and after, there was no other way. Jax isn't a villain at this stage. He's a divided man. He acts as Clay Morrow's right hand, the usurper, the new father, but thinks like John Teller's son. Every decision he makes is martyrdom. When Clay decides to go to war or double down on crime, Jax reacts with the Notebook's caution. He doesn't want more blood. He wants the club's survival without its moral destruction. The dilemma is, can anarchy be redeemed? Can a body built on crime and violence be transformed into something noble? He's in what the existentialist would call a moment of anguish. He can choose to honor Clay and the present life of crime, or honor John and the future life of legality. And in the middle of all this is Gemma Teller Morrow, the engine of tragedy. She's the force of maintenance, the link between old life and new life. Gemma is bad faith, wearing blood-red lipstick to match her hunger for manipulation. Queen Mother of a kingdom that only exists because she believes in it with religious fervor. In the biker world, they'd call her an old lady. But for Gemma, it's not a social role. It's her own identity. She acts as if she were born crowned, deliberately forgetting she was an ordinary girl who met an ordinary boy in a younger California. Philosophically, Gemma is the representation of fatalism. She wants Jax to continue on the road of violence because deep down, she believes this is the only possible life for the Tellers and for SAMCRO. She subtly sabotages change because the status quo is her power. She's not death, but immobility, the weight of history. You were born for this, baby, she whispers to Jax, stroking his face like a papal blessing, planting bad faith like a poison seed, mother's kiss that kills slower than a bullet. He almost believes it. It's easier to believe. Responsibility weighs like lead in the bones. Better to pretend freedom doesn't exist. Better to be a prince awaiting coronation than a man facing choices. Jax, trying to reconcile the dead father, the present stepfather, and the manipulative mother, becomes a battlefield. His expression, that furrowed brow under blonde hair, isn't that of a bad boy. It's perplexity. Then Tara Knowles returns like the ghost of an unlived life, and with her the inevitable confrontation with the possibility of living a real life. She represents everything Jax could have been if he'd had the courage to leave Charming. Doctor, educated, free, saved lives far from here. Clean hands cutting flesh to heal, not to kill. She could be in Chicago now, but she's in Charming, by choice. Absurd choice, Sartre would say. They all are. That's the terrible beauty of freedom. Why did you come back? Jax asks. She doesn't answer, doesn't need to. She came back because she came back. Because she wanted to come back. Pure act of freedom without excuse. She looks at him, and he sees in the reflection of her eyes all the lives he could be living, all the choices he pretends not to have. Between the two, Jax doesn't choose. He oscillates, wants Tara but needs Gemma, wants freedom but fears loneliness. wants a different future, but can't abandon the known past. When Agent Cohn invades Tara's house and tries to rape her, she calls Jax. Then comes the pure Sartrean moment. Jax with the gun in his hand, cold metal against warm palm. The universe contracting to this single instant. He can shoot. He cannot shoot. There's no natural law whispering in his ear. There's no God moving his finger on the trigger. There's no Teller blood commanding the muscles. Just him, the gun, and the choice. Jax shoots, his only free act of the season. There are no higher orders or club code that would be institutionalized bad faith. He kills by personal and visceral choice. After comes the familiar dance of bad faith. He was going to hurt her. I was protecting her. Assuming this would be unbearable, the weight of total freedom crushing his shoulders. So he builds the narrative. Protection, necessity, instinct, rage. Anything but the truth. He wanted to kill. He killed. Clay orders the death and hits the wrong life. Opie was his target, but Donna pays the price. Grotesque mistake in a symphony of mistakes. It's in this moment of grief and lies that John Teller's manuscripts resurface like an earthquake. Gemma had disappeared the originals. Desperate attempt to keep the past buried. But the past has its own roots. The manuscripts aren't memories, they're demolitions. Each page destroys a certainty. The father dreamed of brotherhood. The club became crime enterprise. The father questioned violence, Clay institutionalized it. Script written by the dead for the living who pretend to be dead. VP at 30, president at 40, coffin at 50. Known schedule, comforting even. Freedom is vertigo over the abyss. Script is solid ground. Jax Teller ends the season as an existentialist prince. Conscious, free, responsible, and paralyzed. He saw through the lies that structure his life, but still doesn't have enough courage to destroy them. In the middle of all the chaos, Donna's brutal death, Opie's grief, suspicions about internal betrayals, Piney appears with a copy of JT's manuscripts. The old man knew it was important for Jax to understand what John Teller really wanted for the club. The first season is the dawn of consciousness that he has the keys to the cage, but his hand trembles. He suspects something is rotten in the California kingdom of Denmark, but the evidence gets lost between loyalties and family lies. Abel, fragile and recovering, represents both the possibility of a clean future and the inescapable pressure of continuity. Sartre would say Jax represents modern man in his purest form, condemned to freedom, but taking refuge in bad faith, capable of transcending any situation, but preferring to pretend he's determined by it. Holding the manuscript Piney gave him, Jax has in his hands his father's vision for a different club. But implementing it would mean destroying everything he knows. In charming California, where free men daily choose their own chains and call it brotherhood. Where the sun beats mercilessly on cracked asphalt and souls that pretend they can't choose differently. Where every morning brings the same question. What are you going to do with your freedom today? The first season is the baptism ceremony in the murky waters of conscious choice. The Reaper is watching, and he's only just begun to bleed.